Are you ready? Okay. Hi, Amy. I'm going to show you how to make... Wait, you stand over there, Jonathan. I'm going to show you how to make jam. And it's very, very easy. And first I got all the equipment out here on the table. And it looks like a whole lot, but there are only really two things that you don't already have in your house. Well, maybe three. One is, the first thing I'm going to show you is you need a really, really big pot. And the pot, you can buy all sorts of special canning pots, but I did not. This is just the biggest pot they had at the Ace hardware store. So I'm going to show you how big it is by using Tristan Giuffre. That's how big. Alright, you're released now, Trissy. So you need a really, really big pot. The other thing, so you may have to come close for this, Jonathan. The other thing you need are canning jars. And you buy canning jars in the store in a box like this. And the canning jar has three parts. So one is the jar itself, and the important part is the lid. And the lid, are you getting this? The lid comes in two parts. One that's a ring and one that's a flat piece. The ring you can use over and over again. The flat piece can only be used once. So the thing is, the jars come in all sorts of shapes. What?
You don't need to bring it too close. I can't track
sorry.
you when you bring it too close.
Okay,
actually.
so the jars come in all sorts of shapes and sizes.
Hi, Amy.
The important thing is that they come in two diameters. So there's the regular size, which is probably what you want. And then there's a larger wide mouth one that you probably don't want because those are just a pain in the ass.
Because they're filled with change, apparently.
Well, this one's filled with change, but they're a pain in the ass. Now, the jars, this standard size jar, you can use all sorts of jars. Lots of the jars you have around your house, you can't use plastic with this, which this is, but lots of pickle jars and things are actually the standard size lid and can be reused for canning. So this is a standard size jar. This ginormous thing of garlic
Perfectly appropriate size for garlic is what I want to point out.
is a standard size. The jars come, this is like a bigger size canning jar. Anyway, they come with a standard size lid. So you can reuse the jars, you can reuse the rings. If you are using just regular jars around the house, you can actually buy boxes of rings and lids just in the store. You can buy those. Once you've used the flat part, which is the actual lid, you can't use it again. So you can also buy in the store little boxes that are
all made out of ticky-tacky.
just the flat parts, and so you can buy those too. Alright, so you need some jars, and what you do to make the jam is this. It's really, really simple. Basically, the jam is just fruit and sugar boiled together. So what you do is, here's a pot. So you take a pretty big pot, and you can also, some jams want pectin in them and some don't. So you can buy these boxes of liquid pectin also in the store, and they come inside them. They have pouches of pectin, but they also have this, which gives you proportions for all sorts of fruits and things. It's called jam and jelly recipes, cooked jam recipes. So for example, if you wanted to make strawberry jam, this says take 4 pints of strawberries, which should yield 4 cups crushed strawberries with 7 cups of sugar and 1 pouch Cerdo, and that's going to give you 8 cups of jam, and each of these little jars is a cup. So that's easy enough to do. But I'm sending you my whole jam book recipe because it's very small. I don't know exactly when it'll get to you yet because I haven't mailed it yet, but once I do mail it, it'll come to you, and that has lots and lots of fun recipes. But if you want to get started right away, like, you know, if you have strawberries a-wastin', there you go. So you can just get that. Okay, so the first thing you do is you put the fruit in your pot, and if you want to, you can make jelly, which is a whole, like, you gotta strain it and all that. I never do anything where you have to strain stuff, because that's just tedious. Anyway, you can put your fruit in there, and if you want to, you can take a potato masher and just sort of mash it up. If you don't want to, don't do that. And then you put the sugar in, and you cook it. And my book says that you cook things a really short amount of time, 10 minutes or something. I find it much better to cook it longer than that and get it really nice and thick. So anyway, cook it until you think it's about jam consistency. Now, one thing is some fruits, as you're cooking them, as you're boiling it, basically it sort of foams up. And so what you do is you're stirring it around with your wooden spoon, and it starts to foam up, and you got to sort of keep stirring it because what? You have to keep stirring it because you don't want it to boil over or burn or anything like that. And when it's getting pretty close to being done, you just take a regular spoon, and this seems tedious, but you take a bowl, and you sort of, Jonathan says it is tedious, and you just take your spoon like this and sort of skim the foam off the top, and you skim it off the top and throw it in a bowl. And the reason for that is the foam won't hurt you or anything, but when you open up a jar of jam, if the foam's on there, sometimes you think to yourself, has this molded? And especially if you're going to give it to a friend, you don't want them to open it and go like, oh great, Amy Felselman sent me moldy jam, yum. So that's the thing with the skimming. So you skim the foam off, and you can wait until it's almost done to do that, because a lot of the foam that happens will subside as you cook, but just towards the end you do that. Okay, so you mash the fruit, mix it with the sugar, boiled it for a long time, stirring it a lot, then you take it off the fire, and usually if it's a kind of jam that requires liquid pectin, which this is fruit pectin, so it's vegan, and it's not like horse hooves or anything. Anyway, usually it comes from green apples, and you just put that in and stir it in, and that's a sort of thickening agent, because pectin occurs naturally in fruits that are tart, but some fruits that are not as tart, like apricots, need pectin. Other fruits like strawberries, I don't think usually need pectin, although the Certo Fruit Company tells you that they do. They tell you everything needs pectin, but in any case, some things don't need pectin. All right, so while your jam is cooking and you're stirring it, the other thing that you're doing is sterilizing stuff. So you take your big jar, what's this called? Pot. What? And you fill it with water, and you can sort of see by the discoloration in here, you see by the discoloration in here about how deeply I've filled this. Right, you leave a couple of inches from the top. The thing is, when you put your full jars in, it's going to displace some water. But you want to have about 2 inches of water above the top of your jars, which is why big jars are kind of a drag to do, because you have to have such a huge pot. It's like, how am I ever going to get a pot this big? But these little half-pint jars are fine. So
when I was a kid, we used to do the big jars on their sides.
You can't do them on your sides. You have someone who did that?
I'm still here. Anyway, sorry.
I think people in New Jersey have strange intestinal flora, but that's a whole different discussion. I don't know. Anyway, all right. I think that's wrong. I think it's wrong. You shouldn't be able to do that, but you're still here. All right. But your father eats bugs. Anyway, so don't listen to Jonathan. Fill that up, and so you've got that. I set it on 2 burners of the stove, and you start boiling it. And what you do is you take the jar part of your jars and put them down in there, and they are, when the water comes to a boil, start timing after 10 minutes. That has sterilized the jars. For these lids, you can't boil them because they have this rubber part here, and if you boil it, then it won't seal necessarily. So what you do with the lids is you just boil your tea kettle, and you take all the lids you're going to use, and you should always put a couple of extra jars and lids in, just in case. You never know if you're going to have more jam than you want. And you just put those like this. Can you see it? Like this, down in the jar, down in the bowl. And you cover it with boiling water out of your tea kettle, and then just let it sit there until you're ready to use them. Okay, so the jam is cooking, the jars are sterilizing in boiling water, the lids are under boiling water, and then you're ready to go. When the jam is ready to go, you're ready to go with sealing it. Now, you don't have to seal the jam. You can just put it in plastic containers and put it in the freezer and unfreeze, in small portions, and unfreeze it if you want it. If you want it to be canned so that you can give it to people, or so that it doesn't have to be stored in the freezer, this is what you do. You can it. All right, so the way you can it, this is the only other piece of specialized equipment you need, is a sort of a large funnel like this that's got a big opening. So what you do is, everything's going to be hot and sterilized. So you have some clean towels. In one of them, you get a bit of it damp. So what you do is you take tongs and you very carefully, you turn off this water so it's not boiling anymore. Why are you laughing? This is how you do it. You take tongs, and this is hot and wet and heavy because it's filled with water. So you take the tongs and you very carefully pour out the boiling water. You put this down. You put this, which you've just washed in hot soapy water, and rinse so that it's pretty clean. You put that inside of it. Oh, I need a ladle. You take then a ladle, a regular ladle, because this is also, your jam is also hot. And you ladle it up, and this is the thing about the jam, is you have to leave headroom. So you need to leave about that much space. So that's about a quarter of an inch, maybe a third of an inch space at the top of this. Then you, then you take your clean wet towel and you just gently wipe around the top rim of that jar to clean off any jam that's gotten on it. Then you take a clean dry towel and dry it, because that's the place where the seal happens, so it needs to be perfectly clean and dry. So you just wipe those. Then with your tongs, this is boiling water, you lift the lid and ring out of the bowl, gently put it on there, and then you should be able to touch this enough to screw this down. You don't want to screw it too tight because it wants to be able to let a little air escape, because that's what's going to make the vacuum seal. It's hot now and there's air in there. When it cools down, but you put it on so that lid is tight enough. These lids have a little, here, can you hear this? They have a little button. That's what tells you if it's sealed. When you can pop it up and down like that, it means it's not sealed. Anyway, so you've got that filled with hot jam, you've got the lid on, you put it down in your water, and you do the next one, right? So you fill it with jam, with your thingy, with the ladle, put it in, take it off, get a lid, try not to burn yourself.
You forgot to wipe it down.
You wipe it down, right? Try not to burn yourself, twist that on. I hold this. I just have a hot pad that I'm holding it with because this is hot. So I have a hot pad in my hand that I'm doing all this with, so I don't burn myself. And then I put it in the water. When you've got them all in there, you put the lid on this. You bring it to a boil. Once it comes to a boil, the directions will tell you how long it has to boil to seal. Usually it's about 10 minutes, 15. Then you really shouldn't take the lid off during that time because that causes the temperature to drop in the water. So you just leave it in there. They're boiling. Everything's good. At the end of your 10 or 15 minutes, turn off the fire, take the lid off, and then you take these out and you lift them straight up. You really shouldn't tilt them around, which is why I think Jonathan says he's alive, but actually he's dead, because you don't want any hot jam to get in between that seal, because then it won't seal properly. So you take it out up. You'll notice that usually there's water sitting on top of this. Don't worry about it. It'll evaporate off. Just put that down. So then you really shouldn't touch them at this point because they're going to seal. And what's going to happen is you'll hear as it cools off, you'll hear these sounds that go, well, that wasn't very loud. You'll hear a little pop, and that's those seals going down. And if you look, you can sort of see which ones have gone down. But over the course of the next, 15 or 20 minutes probably, while they're cooling off, those seals will go down. If some of the seals don't go down, that means that one didn't seal. Most of them, I mean, they always go down. But if there's one that doesn't go down, then that's when you eat first. You put it in your refrigerator, and you eat that one first because it didn't seal. So these just have to sit there and cool, and you're not supposed to really open them or touch them or anything for 24 hours. Do you have any questions? So I think that's everything. If that wasn't clear, let me know, okay? That's all.